Oof. All right, so detail how Roosevelt and McKinley were progressive, imperialistic presidents. Within your response, detail specific events of their presidencies. There we go. How are the SATs, Eddie?
Crappy.
You don't like it? They take it a full time?
I don't know the English part.
What's that?
So I didn't like the English part.
Oh. Yeah, go ahead. You forgot in your car.
Yeah.
How did you do that?
I thought it was in my locker.
Oh my gosh, you just realized it now?
No. Jackie told me how to go get it.
Yeah, you gotta have it. What is this all about, huh? Yeah.
Good old.
Gotta run this semester again.
Okay.
No. I
Yeah, I was a petting zoo. Yeah,
I hung around a little bit.
a rabbit. Nice.
I became attached to that rabbit.
There you go. Maybe you can take it home with you or something. Keep it as a pet. Huh? This one? What do you mean? The Spanish-American War, the Great White Fleet, Big Stick Diplomacy, the Square Deal. I rattled off 10 there, pretty much. The Isle of Ohio, Teddy Bear, Nobel Prize winner, Medal of Honor winner. Yeah. Holy cow.
3 C's.
Mm-hmm. 3 C's. All right, let's get after it here. Roosevelt. We talked about him quite a bit already. What do we know about Roosevelt? Chloe, go ahead.
Square deal.
The Square Deal, good job. So in his presidency, he was a progressive president, and he created the Square Deal, which is giving opportunities for all Americans. And he wanted to make sure everybody had a fair hand. Right? He related to poker. I remember talking about that in the first chapter. And the 3 C's of the Square Deal, let's review them again. Conservation, good. Cassidy? Controlling corporations, good. Chloe? Consumer protection, good, awesome. What else about Roosevelt? How was he an imperialistic president? So that was his progressive side. How about imperialistic? Go ahead, Griffin. Yeah, the creation of the Panama Canal, big stick diplomacy. So the United States, under the Roosevelt corollary, will be almost that police force regulating trade through the Western Hemisphere. If any European countries want to access the Western Hemisphere, maybe trade with any of these South American or Central American countries, it must go through the United States first. Good. What else? What else did he do? What else? How is he imperialistic? Cassie, I think you answered this yesterday. What did he do with all these naval ships? Yeah, the Great White Fleet. Good. So he ordered 16 battleships to sail around the world to show the rest of the world what type of military power, naval power we had. And at the time of the 1900s, we had the third largest navy. All right. And we know his time during the Spanish-American War. Part of what group again? What cavalry unit? The Rough Riders. Yep, good job. The Rough Riders. And that's what made him popular, made him famous amongst the people to become president. All right, good. What about McKinley? So just before Roosevelt, what about McKinley? What do we know about him? How is he more of an imperialistic president? Tanner. Okay, good job. Annexed Hawaii. Good. So claiming this land territory for the United States out in the Pacific Ocean. Good. And we talked a lot about the resources like sugar. We talked about the creation of a naval base, Pearl Harbor, in Hawaii. Good. What else? So expansion of territories. How else do we expand to claim more territories? What war did we get involved in? Barbara, what war did we get involved in that we won? Yeah, Spanish-American War. So claiming more of these territories in the Caribbean Sea and out in the Pacific. All right. And finally, following that Monroe Doctrine, controlling the whole Western Hemisphere. Good, good, good. And he was a modern president. Okay. He was helping advance the United States into an industrial power and obviously a world power with the claiming of these territories at the end of the Spanish-American War. All right. What was the nickname of McKinley? What was his nickname? You might see it on a test here. What was his nickname? Cassie, remember? What was it? You're close.
I think it.
Griffin? Idol of Ohio. Good job, because he had a strong political career in Ohio, and he was the last president to serve in what? What war? Another test question, most likely. The Civil War. Yeah, good job. Good job. So McKinley, very famous, obviously. And we'll talk about Roosevelt, a little bit more of interesting facts about him today. 2 terms for today, just 2. That's it. The last 2 presidents we're going to talk about during this progressive imperialistic phase, building up into World War I. All right, we got William Howard Taft, and we have Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson, we're going to focus on a lot in this next chapter. Gabe, what's up?
Can you put up yesterday's?
Terms?
Yeah.
You know what? I can do that for you. I can do that for you. There it is.
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Just one term above. Yeah, we're just talking about these progressive imperialistic presidents. A little spooky this morning. Walking my dog. Little,
What kind of dog?
mini golden doodle, but he's black. Yeah. Yeah, I was walking this morning with all the fog. It was a little scary, a little spooky out. I'm going to see the new Halloween movie tonight. I'm pumped. Are you going to go see it? I'm pumped for it. Matt, you going to see it?
Yeah.
Oh, tonight? Oh, okay. Darn it. They say I guys better sell some popcorn. What's that? Benny. The Amish named him Buster. I said we should have kept that name. I like Buster. Huh? Benny? I didn't name him. I wanted to name him Buster. Buster? Jeez, Cassidy, what's your deal? Really? Are you done with these terms? Really?
Yeah.
Write in your own words.
I always have it in paper. We don't remember. It's, I know. There's some more-
Should write in your own words.
I'm pretty sure more than just, yeah. pretty sure
Should
more
write
than
in your
just-
own words.
But 99% of kids in here.
Maybe 60%. 40? All right, well. Oh, all right. Thank you, Barbara. Maybe that's why she's president.
It's 'cause I could write the word for word down. too.
Yeah, yeah. Kale, I just took the headrest off. Yeah. I mean, I have the pieces back here if you want to try to glue it together, but yeah, I just figured, you know what? I'll take it off. It looks more like a normal chair now, not like a gaming chair. We'll go back and play some
You were talking about
Apex
writing.
Legends or something. I don't know what everybody plays these days.
You can put your head back.
Yeah, I've done that a couple times. Like, oh, oh, oh. All right, William Taft, what do we have? I want to hear someone's response, not Google's response. So I'm not going to pick Chloe.
Oh, yeah.
Now, what do you have, Chloe?
William Howard Taft, States and the 10th Chief Justice of the United States. being the person to help out with officers.
There you go. So that's an interesting fact. We'll talk about that today. He is the only president to be Supreme Court Justice, Chief Supreme Court Justice, which is interesting. So he served obviously in the executive branch, being president, the 27th president, and also in the judicial branch. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. William Taft, again, he's going to follow suit of what Roosevelt was establishing with his progressive plans, okay, expanding more of the square deal, 3 C's, and at the same time becoming imperialistic. All right, so we'll talk more about Taft today. Woodrow Wilson, what do we have? What do we have? Jasmine, what do you have for Woodrow Wilson? You have this one? Okay, is that it? That's it. Oh, you can write a little bit more than that. Tanner.
Yeah, it's for the creation of the League of Nations.
All right, good job. So he's president during World War I, 28th president of the United States, and he will create the League of Nations, which is the predecessor to the United Nations. And this was an idea to try to prevent future warfare after World War I. Was he successful? No, obviously there's World War II, right? But interesting enough, guess who did not join the League of Nations? President Wilson, the United States, came up with the idea to try to have a cooperation amongst countries in the world to try to prevent future warfare. But guess what country decided not to join? Griffin? Well, they were kind of getting the blunt end of the stick of everything from World War I. But Kale?
United States.
Yeah, the United States, yeah. Congress said, nope, we're not getting involved. Why do you think the US Congress decided not to get involved in this League of Nations that was created by Woodrow Wilson? What do you think? Gabe, what do you think? Where are we at compared to Europe? Way across the Atlantic Ocean, right? So we have a better chance just isolating ourselves, maybe prevent ourselves from getting involved with another war if we just don't get involved in that part of the world, right? That's what Congress idea was. Let's just isolate ourselves. Okay, that's a great way to stay out of a future war. And we all know the League of Nations did not work out. World War II starts, and here we are getting involved in another war. All right, so we'll talk about that soon enough. All righty, so moving on here today. Finish up Teddy Roosevelt, talk about Taft and Wilson today. All right, so Teddy Roosevelt, interesting facts. He's the only president awarded the Medal of Honor. And he did so during the Spanish-American War, part of the Rough Riders. So that's a pretty cool fact. Only president awarded the Medal of Honor. And we talked about it yesterday. He was a unique president. He used to hold wrestling matches in the Oval Office. I thought that was pretty funny. And even boxing fights in the Oval Office. He used to get after it a lot. And conservation was huge with Teddy Roosevelt, obviously part of the Square Deal. Made many trips out to the West to see a lot of these, the creations of these national state parks. The only president to leave US grounds, he went to Panama to see the creation of the canal. Well, when they're in progress of creating the canal. Like I mentioned yesterday, the youngest president to hold office at 42 years old. Pretty cool. Who's the second youngest? Anybody know? Griffin? JFK. Yeah, at 43 years old. We'll talk about that more towards the end of the year. Won a Nobel Peace Prize. Anybody know how he won that Nobel Peace Prize? I mentioned it in here already. Griffin, you know? No, maybe you should have. You're right with that. Maybe you should have, but what did he win a Nobel Peace Prize over? Anybody know? He actually, he solved peace with Japan and Russia. So Japan and Russia were in a war, 1904, 1905, and he helped negotiate peace amongst the two countries. All right, so we'll talk about that more when we get to World War I and how Japan is rising ever more as a world power in Asia, especially. Okay, and Russia, maybe how they're falling behind and how they're not going to be a really keen ally in World War I. But once World War II comes around, they're one of the most strongest world powers there is. And we'll talk about the creation, the development of the Soviet Union during that time. All right, so, and he was a famous progressive. What political party did he create to run in 1912? You guys remember that? I know I talked about it yesterday too. Do you remember, Cassidy? Not the Bear Moose. You're close. Griffin, you know? The Bull Moose. Yeah, good job. The Bull Moose Party. And it was a part of the Progressive Party. So advancing for the middle class, helping protect people. Okay, obviously consumer protection, control corporations, conservation. And he picked the bull moose because what's stronger than a bull moose? Really nothing. Maybe a grizzly bear. I don't know. And then the teddy bear is named after him because of his conservation practices. And on a hunt one time, he prevented a hunter from killing a cub. So they said, oh, teddy bear. Yeah, and then became a popular children's toy. Unique facts. There you go. Teddy bear. Teddy Roosevelt. You guys good with that? Still writing anybody? No? Okay. Taft. Taft. So William Howard Taft, he was a shy man. He actually didn't want to run for politics, run for president whatsoever. But Teddy Roosevelt thought he would be the best in charge after his presidency to lead the nation, continue his progressive methods, and help advance the United States even more as a world power. So in a way, Taft was Roosevelt's right-hand man. Taft was vice president under Roosevelt, and Roosevelt will assign him to be governor of the Philippines, that territory we just acquired after the Spanish-American War. Because Roosevelt thought, well, we need to make sure we have an established territory out in the Pacific so that we can keep a keen eye on these Asian countries and really see what kind of trade is flowing through into Asia. So he picked his right-hand man, William Howard Taft, to run the operations out there in the Philippines. And I know it talked about the Philippines They're trying to overthrow the American leadership there right after the US claimed the territory after the Spanish-American War. So we need to make sure we had firm control of these territories like the Philippines right after the Spanish-American War. William Taft. This guy was larger than life, literally. He was about 350 pounds. He was huge. And there's a rumor he got stuck in the bathtub the first time he jumped in there. Had to get a bunch of butter and fling him out. Man, how funny is that? William Taft. You guys good with that slide? No? Still right? Okay. Okay. And we'll talk about it here soon enough. But with William Taft, eventually, Roosevelt, towards the end of Taft's presidency, he wouldn't be happy with the way he's running the country. So their friendship kind of just deteriorates. And it becomes almost a rivalry when we get to the 1912 election. And this is what splits the vote of the Republican Party, allowing for a Democratic president, really the first time since the beginning of the Civil War, become president. And this is alarming for many people, which we'll talk about soon. All right, so Taft, like I mentioned, governor of the Philippines, and he had a strong political background before. But like I mentioned, he didn't want to be the president of the United States, but because of his political background, because of his progressive methods, Roosevelt thought he'd be the next man in charge, that he would do a good job as president. He was also a big golfer. He loved golf, which I thought was interesting, being such a big guy. How did he get the club? I don't know. You can only imagine that side, Paul. I wonder if they rode on horseback too, like around the golf course, or they just walked. You know, we have carts now. Maybe they rode horse. I don't know, wagons. Whatever. Well, like I mentioned, Philippines. Roosevelt thought he'd be a good person to put out in this new territory we acquired to try to help establish it and become a means of trade through Asia, right? And to help build and establish a military base in this part of the world. And like I said before, he's the only president to serve in the judicial branch, and he becomes the Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, which is interesting enough because he was president and then he served in the judicial branch after his presidency. Usually after your presidency, you just kind of wrap things up and retire, you're done. But he thought he could serve a little bit more in politics and help benefit the U.S. moving forward. And being a part of the U.S. Supreme Court, one of the highest honors you can achieve, especially as a lawyer, right? Being a part of politics, okay, and deciphering and deciding amongst different types of cases in the U.S. that are brought up to the national level. So being a part of the U.S. Supreme Court. William Taft. Am I still writing? Okay, sorry. So like I was saying, towards the end of his presidency, things just kind of didn't work out for Roosevelt and Taft. And the main thing is that Roosevelt thought he could do a little bit better job with his progressive movements and expanding the U.S. as an imperialistic power. And things just kind of went to the side. So that causes Roosevelt to run against him in the 1912 election, making it the most famous of all time. So for his presidency, he defeats William Jennings Bryan. Oh my gosh, we talked about him also with Roosevelt, okay, and with McKinley. William Jennings Bryan ran for president 3 times and lost 3 times. Could you imagine that, Griffin? Can you imagine going up running for president 3 times and losing 3 times? Jeez, he's just that close. Just couldn't break it, right? And we talked about William Jennings Bryan already, famous lawyer, especially for the Scopes monkey trial, that evolutionary theory being taught in public schools, and it just kind of showed the route the U.S. was in yet, with its fundamentalist values, with the challenge of modernist values. And the 1912 election, like I mentioned yesterday and a little bit today, that's the most famous election really of all time, because this is the first time a third party almost won office. Okay, Taft running as a Republican because he was just president, he was running for a second term. And we have Woodrow Wilson as a Democrat. But like I mentioned, before, Roosevelt, he wasn't really happy with what Taft was doing as a Republican progressive president. So he ran against Taft and Wilson as a third party candidate, the Bull Moose Party. And he came real close to winning the presidency, but because you had really two sides or a branch of the Republican Party, what does that do? It splits the votes of the Republican Party. Does that make sense, guys? So now that's what allowed a Democratic president to win this 1912 election. Not taking anything away from Woodrow Wilson, but if Taft would have ran uncontested against Roosevelt, let's say, or vice versa, then I'm sure a Republican Party president would have won again, no problem. Well, it's just because the votes were divided amongst the Republican Party, and that allowed Woodrow Wilson to win. We'll talk more about Wilson next chapter, and here next slide. Guys, good with Taft? Yeah. Okay. Oh, so interesting facts yet. Like I mentioned, he got stuck in the bathtub because he was a pretty large man. He's also the first president to start the symbolization of the start of the baseball season, throwing the first pitch. I thought that's pretty cool. I'm sure you guys see that all the time, throwing the first pitch, symbolizing the start of the baseball season, America's pastime. First president to have an automobile in the office. Last president to have a cow. I thought that was pretty cool. Starting a petting zoo there in the White House, right? Right, Kale? Will you head down there?
Oh,
Yeah. So those are some interesting facts there for Taft. One of the most famous ones, I think, it wasn't the start of the baseball season, but shortly after 9/11, George Bush, he went to, it was really ramping up to the playoffs right after 9/11, throwing the pitch, Yankee Stadium, getting everybody fired up. And that pitch really symbolized that America's back. It's not going anywhere, right? Even after something as terrible as 9/11 that happened, that occurred. Okay, we can move on and show the rest of the world we're still that superpower, even just with the throwing of a pitch. I thought that was pretty cool. I'm sure you guys seen videos of that. Griffin, you ever see that before? George Bush throwing the pitch after 9/11? Yeah, it was pretty cool. I actually just talked about that this last remembrance of 9/11, 20 years after. And George Bush was saying he met Derek Jeter in the back when he was warming up, throwing pitches to warm up. And Jeter's like, hey, knock it out of the park. George Bush is like, I got goosebumps. It's like the president of the United States getting goosebumps from Derek Jeter. You think it'd be vice versa, but it just goes to show how big entertainment is in the US and how big sports is. All right, you guys good with that? I gotta fly through here quick. I gotta go over Wilson. I want to finish up. Good. Okay. Up. All right, cool. All right, Woodrow Wilson, last president we're going to talk about with the imperialistic progressive presidents. Like I mentioned, we'll talk about him more in World War I, 28th president of the United States. He won the election just because there was a divide in the Republican Party, because Roosevelt and Taft split the vote of the Republicans. So this allowed Woodrow Wilson, this pushed Woodrow Wilson to become president. Again, maybe if they ran uncontested in the Republican Party, then they would have won, no problem. But because there is a divide in the Republican Party, Woodrow Wilson becomes really the first Democratic president since the beginning of the Civil War. Interesting stuff there. His nickname, schoolmaster in politics. He was an educator before he got into politics. That's why he got the nickname. 28th president of the US. He's going to be famous for his time during World War I. A lot of people said that he maybe overstepped his boundaries during World War I. and had a lot of limitations and restrictions on people's freedoms, especially because of the paranoia when we're fighting Germany. There's a lot of German culture in the United States, specifically here in Pennsylvania. So he wanted to try to restrict maybe this espionage and maybe this the threats of a terror attacks in the U.S. internally because of the strong German culture in the U.S. So they start changing names, certain things. Sauerkraut, you guys eat sauerkraut? They actually changed the name to Liberty Cabbage. How crazy is that, huh? It's unbelievable. Liberty Cabbage. Who would like that, huh? All right, so his political career, governor in New Jersey, and he was elected 2 terms as president. So during his first term, he was popular, okay? He was popular. Like I mentioned, he won that 1912 election just because Roosevelt and Taft split the Republican Party. But Wilson was popular. A lot of it because it was a change. It was a difference at the national level. And in a way, it was more increased government action, continuing these progressive movements. And it opened the eyes of many Americans that, you know what, Democratic Party has a lot to offer as well with progressive movements, not just the Republican Party. Towards the end of his presidency, though, we'll talk, he loses a lot of popularity with the people. And that is because of his government control and his really overstepping the boundaries of limitations and trying to really persuade and push his power into the freedoms of the people, limiting freedom of speech, freedom of assembly. Okay, we'll talk about that because of the paranoia of World War I. And right after that, because the Red Scare, this fear of communism spreading throughout the US. They changed another name of a sports team. You guys know the Cincinnati Reds. And they changed their name because Reds in it. Oh, it's involved with communism. The Red Sox changed their name because of red involved. Oh my gosh. All right, so the only president buried in Washington, D.C., first president to receive 9 million popular votes. So that time a lot. I know I mentioned that yesterday. Biden just, he received the most with 80 million this past election. Before that, 75, 76 with Trump. And at this time, 9 million was the top, right? So it just goes to show how many more people voted, how many more people participating in government, and just the population alone, right? In the United States. Second president to personally address Congress, and that was because of World War I. So the first president since George Washington, our first president, to address Congress. And again, doing that because of the involvement in World War I. The US stepping up as a world power and getting involved in a global conflict, a world conflict. Really, since the establishment of the country, we wanted to stay isolated, stay out of world affairs. Well, we couldn't do that any longer. And after World War I, this will change the US's involvement in the world forever. And like I mentioned, he sees us through World War I, creates and establishes the League of Nations, which is this cooperation amongst all countries in the world to prevent future warfare. You got that, Charlene? Yeah? You good on Woodrow Wilson? Okay. All right, is there any questions with these progressive imperialistic presidents? We good with that? No, you good? Okay. Glad you have your iPad. Yeah. All right. That's all I have for today. Tomorrow, just want to talk about viewpoints of imperialism. I'll get you your study guide. And we're thinking about test on, how about Tuesday? We'll have a review Monday, test Tuesday. Cool. There we go.